How's that?
And I just need to test
Better?
out the echo situation. Make sure we don't get that again. Okay, I think we're good now.
Mayor Beamish, you have a text message
Good.
or a chat message.
Chat message. Is that the one more thing with her? Chat. Record on this computer. Chat one. Yeah, I've got that at the top of my list. Yeah.
Lindsay? Lindsay?
Sorry, my audio is cutting out. Just one moment.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I've got two computers going here.
Sure. Maybe what are the rules regarding chat? Like clearly, I guess we shouldn't be sending each other private messages, right?
No, and nothing's private. As soon as the meeting
recording.
records,
Yeah.
the chat downloads.
Okay.
So I would advise against the chat.
Okay.
And we are live on YouTube now.
We have 14 participants out there. And we know them all.
Everyone hear the 7 o'clock cheers for essential services?
We always do it at our place. I haven't heard them here, but yeah, we do
Yeah,
it at our place.
I hear the ferry.
Yeah, okay.
Ferry honks, everybody does.
But we are 7 o'clock, that means. So
Yeah.
it's time to start a meeting. So welcome everybody and call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of council for April 21, 2020. And I acknowledge that this evening we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. I also want to acknowledge that our flag is flying at half staff yesterday and today, and in recognition of the member of the RCMP and the victims of the Nova Scotia shooting. Our flag will remain at half mast, I guess. Lindsay, is it for the week or is it just for a couple of days in policy?
I'll have to look that one up.
Okay, but I think that we did that yesterday in recognition. Manny, CAO?
To Mr. Mayor, typically we'll do 3 days.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I have it on my calendar to stay until
Okay.
the end of Wednesday. We'll
Yeah.
put it up
There's
Thursday
an-
morning.
Yeah, there is an actual policy on it, but yeah, so we'll do that. So yeah, it was a very sad thing, and we certainly recognize the value of all lives in our community and the RCMP and the service they perform for us. So I'll call the meeting to order. It now being 7:02 on my clock, and have a resolution that the regular business agenda of April 21, 2020 be adopted. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. It's adopted. We'll go right into minutes now. We have minutes of the regular council meeting of April 7, 2020, a recommendation that they be adopted. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And the minutes of the special council meeting of April 14, 2020, recommendation that they be adopted. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Gadrad, thank you. Adopted. I'd like to stop there for a second, and I'd like people to turn to those minutes. In my agenda, that's page 17 and 18. And I'd like to talk with you all briefly about resolution 2020-186. And that's the resolution staff be directed to prepare the 2020 financial plan bylaw and the 2020 annual tax rate bylaw. And I guess the previous one as well, the council directs staff to prepare the 2020 annual tax rate, authorizing an overall 4% tax increase with a business tax multiple. I'd like to ask council if they have any appetite at this point in time to change that multiple, the tax rate, the 4%. Our community is not going to recover anytime soon. And I think we're all aware that there are businesses, there are people out there who are challenged to make payments. I think we had a bit of feedback when the property, or rather when the water sewer invoices went out from people saying, really, we just can't afford these increases. And I met with staff this afternoon, and we looked at the budget again, and we looked at three items. One is the RCMP reserve, which is equivalent of 1%. The other one is the $23,000 for the software for finance, which the director of finance assured me that even if we approved it, she could not implement it this year because of the other pressures of the time, and also that the actual quote received has expired now, so they have to go back. And the third one is council furniture of $3,000 that we're not meeting in council chambers, and I don't know when we will, so I don't know what the importance of that is in this year. With those items, that's approximately $60,000, slightly less than 2%, but a significant adjustment as it is. Staff feel that, in my conversation with them, feel that those are things that could be accommodated in the budget and without impacting operational requirements for this year. And I'd like to ask council, I'd like to make a motion to council at this time that we recast the budget and eliminate those items. There is time to do that. We are in a fortunate position of actually being ahead of where we are in a number of years. Budget is not required to be adopted until May the 15th. So that we're in a fortunate position of knowing exactly what our financial state is, but also being able to review that and make further amendments. So I'd really like to discuss that with council. Councilor Lumley?
Yeah, are you moving that? Are you moving?
I would move that put it on the table, and corporate officer?
Hi, sorry, if I could just suggest some wording. What we're going to have to do if council wishes to go this route is rescind resolutions R 2020-185 and R 2020-186, and then make two new resolutions with the new tax rate that council would like to see. So I would first suggest rescinding those motions, and then we'll make another one creating new resolutions.
I would move that so that we can have that discussion with council. And then I don't have a tax rate. I just have a figure of approximately $60,000 if we take those three items out of the budget. So I would move that we rescind those and put it back on the table for discussion. Councilor Lumley?
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay.
I know that there's a lot of communities. I know in BC for sure, and I'm sure around Canada are doing everything they can. That's why I was like really happy and proud of council to reduce the multiplier. And I think anything we can do to help the residents of Gibsons, there's not many things municipalities can do. Like, we don't have the power to waive a lot of things, or we don't have a lot of money to give away. We're not the province or the feds, but I think anything we can do, I think I would support at this time. And the fact the RCMP is 1%, which it's hard to plan for things in the future that we don't even know what the future is at this point. There could be relief in the future from the provincial government. So let's keep the money in the town's pockets, I think, and help as many people as we can. And I think all three of these are great ideas. That's why I seconded it.
Councilor Kroll?
Something else that has come up is Sea Cavalcade they indicated that they were not going to be going ahead. So there's another potential $18,000 there.
Yeah, that's 15,000. We talked about that. We thought, well, that's actually kind of in that grant kind of category. We may be in a position to want to be able to give some additional grants later this year, either as businesses are able to, maybe supporting some publicity around Gibsons is open for business or something else like that, so that there may be opportunities. But that is in the grant category, and we thought the other ones are all, I think, on the almost all the capital side of the house, and so that they kind of sit in there as an easy change for us. We did talk about that one. Yeah. Councillor Ludwig, any?
I totally support it. I think it's a good move. I think our businesses in this are all communities in BC are going to struggle this year. I will admit it makes me a little nervous because of our police tax building up and
Yeah.
what we're going to face down the
Yeah.
road. But like Councillor Lumley said, maybe there'll be some relief down the road, and so keeping the money in our community is a good move right now.
Councillor Dindrad?
Fully agreement.
Yeah, okay. It will almost offset the increase in the water and sewer that people are getting on that tax up per household. So that's kind of a balancing that we can actually talk to people about and keeping it low. We are kind of recognizing we are basically going to be going in with a tax, which is cost of living increase, but that's probably where we should be this year, and recognize that we have to keep going on some things. So with that, then I'll call the question on that resolution to rescind. All in favor? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Council. And the next resolution, Corporate Officer?
Yes,
We've
so
rescinded. Sorry.
sorry, if you're just asking for a suggestion at this point, in terms of meetings, we would still like to come back, or staff would still like to come back to the April 28th meeting with the bylaws prepared, just because we are running short on some time. So I would recommend passing 2 new resolutions that council directs staff to prepare the 2020 annual tax rates, authorizing an overall and then provide percentage tax increase with business tax multiple of 2.75. And so that percentage is what staff would be looking for.
I can comment on that.
Yes, Director of Finance.
So the equivalent for the changes that council is suggesting, the equivalent increase would be approximately 2.2%.
Okay.
That's the cost
So
of living
maybe
and
we
a slight increase.
We could put that into the resolution in 2.2%.
That takes
as
out
the
the
increase?
1%. Yeah, it
Yeah.
takes out the 1% for policing, and then the equivalent of those 2 projects on the capital plan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. And the second part of that resolution was to still come to April the 28th.
The next
Okay.
part of the resolution would be that staff be directed to prepare the 2020 financial plan bylaw and the 2020 annual tax rate bylaw for council approval.
Yes, okay. Somebody like to move that?
I'll move.
Councillor Kroll, Councillor Dindrad, thank you. Further discussion on that? All in favor? Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I want to also acknowledge the work the staff has done on this. I mean, we've gone back to the well. This is our 3rd time now, but we have the luxury of time. We have the luxury of a well-prepared budget that we were able to understand very early in the process and be able to tweak it now the second time. I don't expect we can tweak it anymore unless the mayor's salary goes on the table. So that's another 1%. So we'll see what we can do with that. So thank you very much. So that that being said, those minutes then of April the 14th as amended, have a motion to adopt those minutes as amended. Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry to jump in,
Corporate-
Mr. Mayor. The minutes stand. You did already adopt the minutes, and this was
Okay.
under business arising, and you've just rescinded and
Right.
made a motion. So
You're right. Yeah,
you're good to move on.
that's right. We're good to go. Yeah, okay. All right, so now we will take inquiries. Does anybody have an inquiry?
I'll just jump in at this point and ask anybody who's attending the meeting if they have a question. They can use the raise hand feature, and I'll turn your audio on so you can interact with council. And I'm not seeing anyone, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll then proceed to committee reports. We have the Planning and Development Committee of April the 7th, and the first resolution arising from that was, I guess that's just minutes being received. The zoning amendment for cannabis production facility, recommendation that the zoning amendment for a cannabis production facility at 1037 Venture Way be deferred until the cannabis policy is adopted. Does somebody move that? Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley, all in favor? Thank you. Administration reports, Director of Finance, the 2020 budget presentation overview. Have we left you anything to present, Director of Finance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this one I had asked to be on the agenda just to give council an overview of the budget discussions to date, and look for some direction regarding additional meetings if required. So we've had 7 committee style budget discussions and 1 council level meeting discussion for the budget. The budget information on the website is being enhanced by Elizabeth to provide more information to the public. We've had extensive coverage in the newspapers this budget season, which has been very helpful to get the information out to the community. The public has had ample opportunity over the past 2 months to provide comment. So before council just provided the direction that you did, I was looking for any additional requests for public participation, because normally in a normal budget year, we would have done a traditional open house. Given the direction, I have to do some work on changing the bylaws, and I do want to stick to the 3 readings scheduled for April 28th. So we had discussed earlier this afternoon some options of that, and that would be so 3 readings on April 28th, an ad in the Coast Reporter providing information to get to people who maybe aren't online regarding budget information, and an adoption on May 5th. And so that would be the alternative to the traditional budget open house, because we're running out of time on that one. So I was looking for feedback from council on that.
And the ad could be a insert into the paper, or a full page in the paper outlining what the budget major projects are for this year, and the other activities we're involved in.
Yeah, and I would defer to our director of, our communications coordinator, Elizabeth. I don't know if she wants to chime in on here. This is I think a bit of a surprise for her. So if she wants to jump in, that would be a good time. I think Lindsay has to make her as a presenter, but I did discuss it with Elizabeth earlier today, and she has been doing a lot of work on the website, and you can notice some improvements there. So, I can see that she's getting moved over, so I'll stop and she can chime in.
Elizabeth, are you there?
So now I'm here. Hello.
There you go.
Yeah, I would say I think a newspaper ad and maybe a full page ad is a good idea, just because so much of the information that we are pushing out is online, and just for those people that we're not reaching online, I think a full page would give us a good opportunity to hit some of the highlights that really matter the most to people. And yeah, just let them know what the budget looks like this year.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Manny, do you have any comments on that, CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Not at the moment. I think what we were concerned about is making sure that we don't go too low that starts to infringe on our ability to provide some primary services.
Yeah.
We don't have any concerns about that at the moment.
Yeah.
And we'll, knowing that also a couple months from now, probably early in the fall, we'll sort of see where the chips will be and have another opportunity to adjust as necessary.
Council, anything, thoughts on the ad versus the meeting versus, or just put it on the website? Any thoughts? Councilor Diendrad? You're still muted. Sorry, Councilor Diendrad, you're muted.
I like the idea of putting on the newspaper,
Yeah.
the whole demonstration, right? The full thing, because many people don't. Yeah, they don't do online, and then at least we cover everybody.
Yeah. Other comments? Councilor Ladwig, did you have your hand up?
No, I agree with Councilor DeAndre and everybody. Full paper ad is good.
Yeah. So do you need a resolution on that, Director of Finance?
I don't think so. No, I just was looking for some direction, so that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So the recommendation that's in the agenda is that the Director of Finance's verbal report regarding the 2020 budget presentation overview be received. Would you like to move that? Councilor Diendrad, Councilor Ladwig, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, that's approved. And go to 7.2, again, the Director of Finance, the provincial government COVID-19 property tax framework announcement on April 16, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an update, as you mentioned, about the provincial announcement made on April 16th. So on April the 7th, Council directed staff to provide some tax penalty relief by splitting the 10% tax penalty into two and applying 5% on July the 3rd and additional 5% on any remaining taxes as of or after September 1st. And on April 16th, the province announced changes to the property tax framework, and an adjustment is now required to it in order to comply with the new provincial direction. So on the April 16th news release, the province, the key point is that they're postponing the date that the late penalties apply for commercial properties to October 1st, 2020. So they're looking to provide some relief for commercial property owners. And so the result is that while the due date remains the same, so we're still sticking with the July 2nd tax due date for all classes, there is now a requirement by the province for the October 1st penalty date for just certain classes. So they've identified a handful of specific classes. And so we are under the alternative tax regime right now, and we move to the 5% and 5%. So we could authorize a different penalty date for different classes. But the setup required is very challenging given the limited time available, and that would be the software programming setup. And there's also issues of having multiple class properties. So a property that has commercial and residential in the same assessment, two different assessments on the same property with different penalty dates adds additional complexity to the issue. So it's quite complicated. So given the new requirements and the corresponding challenges, staff are proposing that the tax due date remain as July 2nd. We want to encourage everyone to pay their taxes on time. The penalty date for all taxes be changed to October 1st, and a 10% penalty be applied at that time. So go back to the 10%, but move the date back. There is a potential negative impact on cash flow, and that is acknowledged. And so the July 2nd due date remains the same. And all property owners who can meet the due date are strongly urged to do so in order to maintain the town's cash flow required for essential services. So, I mean, we only charge taxes to provide essential services, so the due date is there for a reason. The province is recognizing the cash flow and the revenue shortfalls that may arise as a result of the change, and they have provided some additional support which will help. So the provision to delay the school tax remittance until the year end will assist with the cash flow challenges that are expected. So normally we remit about $2.5 million in July, mid-July for the province, for the school tax remittance. They're letting us keep that money that we collect and deferring that payment until the end of the year. to the province. And in addition, while limited, we do have operating reserves and surpluses and capital reserves that can be used, but only if necessary to fund the operations in the short term. And I have a report that's, I think, right after this one regarding an increase to the revenue anticipation bylaw, which will also help the town cover shortfalls that may arise. And so I want to, reaffirm that the July 2nd tax due date remains the same. There's no change there. And we would be advertising that as in previous tax years. And as we sort of alluded to a bit earlier in the discussion about the budget and moving some of the projects around. So in recognition of the potential cash flow challenges and need to draw on reserve funds, projects requiring taxation of reserve funding will be reviewed prior to starting. And so we're going to have two kind of key dates here. One will be July 2nd. And so I'm recommending that an operational level that we hold any projects, non-essential service projects that are taxation funding or reserve funding until after that date, so we can see where our cash flow is, and potentially up until October if we need to, because we need to use those funds for alternate purposes. And so once council approves this change, then the parameters will be included in the annual tax rate bylaw that's being brought to you again on April the 28th. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, before we discuss it, we'll make a motion that we receive your report on the tax framework announcement, April 16th. Councillor Crowell. Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor, receive the report. Okay, discussions, council. Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, my questions for the Director of Finance. It's clearly the report's a very concise report, but there was, and I guess obviously there's a lot of information happening very quickly, but these are the province's assistance to municipalities. Like this is right now, this is the extent of it. Like is there anything else on the board, or have they discussed anything? I know the federal government's always saying we've got plans to do this and this, but it needs ministerial approval and stuff. Is there anything else? Because I'm just thinking to myself, I'm thinking, well, encouraging taxpayers is one thing, but I mean, if I can keep my money till October the 1st, why wouldn't I? And I guess borrowing interest or interest-free from your own capital reserves is one thing, but I guess there's no programs that they're going to supply that say if you need any, like there's no borrowing that can be in place and then paid back with any taxes in the future. I'm just, it doesn't seem like a lot of help for municipalities. I'm just, unless I'm missing something, I don't know, maybe you could clarify, I don't know.
Sure. So the help that the province, I mean, it's difficult to be able to adjust to that provincial directive. So I don't make that recommendation lightly about moving that penalty date. The one thing about, people being able, they won't get penalized until later. I mean, taxes do cover the calendar year. So we've already basically fronted half a year of essential services for the communities. I think that's an important communication we can put out. The assistance that the province is providing. So I do have a report coming up about the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw. And so that is an avenue that we will be able to borrow in short-term funds that we can help cover the cash flow. So they've opened that up to allow it to be extended beyond the calendar year if we need to. So that's one area. And the other one is that they're allowing municipalities to borrow interest-free from their own capital reserves. And so for us, our reserves are quite limited. So that's, it's helpful, but we're limited because, as we know, our reserves are quite low. We do have some. And then the third one is delaying the school tax remittance until the end of the year. They're basically allowing us to use that cash in the short term. And the province has, their goal was to help commercial, and the unintended consequence was a challenging situation to be able to do that and still address the software challenges that in order to keep the status quo for residential.
To the Director of Finance, we still have to pay the SCRD, the money the SCRD requisition, do we not?
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's the really challenging bit, is that we do have to pay that requisition. Yeah, and that's what the province has recognized. And I think that's one of the reasons that they are allowing us to, use our reserves and deferring that. Those basically the three items that they're providing to help us with our cash flow. They're recognizing that, yes, we have to pay the regional district, the hospital, of course, as part of that. And then BC assessment is in there too.
The school tax portion is collected in our tax bill.
That's
so
right.
that if people don't pay it until October the 1st, it's only those people who have prepaid or do step up and pay it that we get to use that portion.
Yeah, that's right. So the school tax, the way the legislation goes for that is we have a large lump sum in 15 days, I think it is, or 10 days after the due date. And it's a set amount, about 75% of what is owed, regardless of what's collected. So it's really important that people do stick to the July 2nd due date and do, assist the town to be able to provide the services that we do and help us basically, help us out here. Yeah. Recognize the essential services that we're providing.
Councilor D'Andrade?
I thought about that and I have two ideas. One is to put a note on the newspaper again and on the website, really asking people to, whoever is able to pay, because it would relieve future debt in the future from the town, kind of explaining the situation. I mean, I'm sure if someone can pay, they would feel sympathetic instead of just say, well, I'm going to delay. Another thing, I wonder if there could be a trade-off. Okay, if I pay on time, I'll get 5% off on my next water bill. Something like that. I don't know. It could be because, if the town, if 50% of people default and we have to borrow money, it is a lot of, I know we only pay what we borrow, but on the report it was 3.777 potentially a month. So I don't know. That's two ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
I like sorry, Director of Finance here. I like the first one. I agree with you. Then I think part of it is that, I think the community will recognize that the people who can pay will pay. We've seen a really good response so far in utility bill payments, which is great, very promising. We also have about 12% of our taxpayers defer their taxes. So there's no reason why that would change. I'm expecting that might actually increase a bit. And with the tax deferment program, we get the funds quite quickly, which is great. And then we also have about 10% of taxpayers residential who get their taxes paid by their mortgage payments. So that's already set up. And so those are basically the funds are already there for that. So there's a good portion that will be able to do that. I hesitate on providing an incentive out of other areas. One, because water and sewer is a different pot of money, the user fees. And also, I just hesitate in general on that one.
And we also have the ability to defer start dates on projects so that we just don't start a project if we don't have the funds available for it at the time.
That's right. Yeah. And that then becomes, the impact would be a level of service to the community. So they would hopefully recognize that that's the trade-off. But for projects that we can actually defer, there are crucial projects that we cannot do that, like the treatment plant, the lift station and the other Zone 3. So.
But all of this recognizes that this is a unique year, and every level of government is trying to help push opportunities and assistance downstream to the people. And we've done that through our own budgeting process. And I do agree with the idea, if you rather than have two separate tax dates, we just have the one tax penalty date, and so that staff doesn't have to kind of have a separate tracking system and set that up. And so that the next year we could come back and redo the tax due dates and penalty dates as we had intended. Councillor Lumley?
Okay. Don't take this the wrong way, but and I hope it's just should we tone it down? Like, I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, should we just say nothing? Should July 1st and 2nd come around and everyone pays their taxes, and then those that can't, then you say, well, no problem. Again, like, my fear is that people that can will just take advantage of the opportunity. So I know it's a touchy subject, and these are the thoughts rolling through my mind. That's all. I just
I think in one sense that might be an option, but there's a certain transparency into what we're doing, and
but
I'm
just
sure
play
there's,
it down. That's all I'm saying. Just playing it
Yeah.
down a bit. That's
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
I'm sure
The,
there's a media story there somewhere.
yeah, if I
Director
could
Coonan?
comment on that. So we do, as all previous tax years, like I mentioned in the report, we emphasize the July 2nd due date. So really what's important about taxes is the due date. We don't generally focus on the penalty date. So we will continue that and focus on the July 2nd due date. Yeah,
But
point taken.
we do have to put information about the penalty date in the tax notice, do we not?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But the
Yeah.
due date is much more prominent and always has been,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's the important date for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I think that encouraging people to pay, a lot of people will understand that, as I say. So we have two resolutions in front of us. One is that we rescind resolution 2021-69. And further, that for the 2020 property taxation year, council authorized a due date of July 2nd, 2020, and that the penalty amount and date as set at 10% on unpaid property taxes as of October 1, 2020. Do you want to add for all classes in there, Director of Finance?
I hadn't, I don't know if it's necessary, but you can if you like.
Okay, just so that it distinguishes from what the province has provided, we've actually gone
Sure.
beyond with the province. So
Yeah.
we just say for all classes, property classes. Oh. Now, does anybody wish to move that? Councillor Deidrad, Councillor Lumley, all in favor? Thank you. And once again, thank you for a very easily understandable report. And bringing all these announcements together for us and making them understandable and making decisions on them has been excellent. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. You're welcome.
So we'll go to council reports and we'll go around the table. I see a pattern in front of me. So anybody, well, actually, I'll let everybody choose if they want to make a report. Who would like to make a report? Councillor Lumley.
Yeah. Yesterday, I Zoomed with Scredo, and I must say, Colin's probably like a really good choice for to be the head on that snake. He's very intelligent. He's well spoken, and he works. He does a lot of work. So I think that was like, I mean, like always, like when a municipality like ours is giving that kind of money to an organization, I think it's easy to write the check with Colin doing the work. I'm just going to go through some of my notes from the meeting. It was a long meeting. It was over 2 hours, but they actively have been reviewing proposed economic relief programs. They did do a survey, and one of the interesting things from the survey was that over 74% of businesses on the coast are uncertain if they can pay the rent in the future. And a lot of those people express the unwillingness for landlords to assist them. This is specifically business, of course, which kind of struck me as strange, but unfortunate, but strange. Now there's like a ton of organizations like in Vancouver, all over BC, Vancouver Island, Powell River, like all sorts of, like all the Chamber of Commerce and so on and so forth. I mean, I guess they're kind of surveyed out now, and they're trying to they're coming up with their own plan. So they will be introducing a Sunshine Coast Business Recovery Center, which is a website, obviously, and it will contain a hotline. So what they're going to do is they're condensing every way that you can get relief or get help, and they're going to help you with that. And if you don't understand anything on the website, call the hotline. And they suggest, with all these different things coming up, they're kind of saying that savesmallbusiness.ca for business owners is, they think that that's, those guys are the ones to look towards if you have any issues. Also, Community Futures has come up with a program for small business loans up to $25,000. Very quick approval process. And there's some other programs they're talking about, like buy now and shop later. And then they discuss the mental health issues that might come up from a lot of these problems that people are going to have with their businesses that are leveraged against their homes and so on and so forth. They did ask me for a comment. Obviously I can't speak for council, but from a business perspective, my suggestion was that, like, these recovery programs are in place, and it's great to have a correlation and a place to go get them. But my suggestion was that even to go for Scredo to go a bit further in the fact that be like on the forefront of what happens, like how are businesses going to get back in, like once they start lifting restrictions and like social distancing measures in place, but business can reopen. I think that if they, put some of their resources and our resources into helping small businesses get back on their feet once this happens, I think that'd be a good direction for them to go in. So that's it.
Good. Yeah. I might just add on that Councillor Kroll and CAO and myself had a discussion also with Colin yesterday about specifically around Gibsons and what's happening in Gibsons. My concern is, for those businesses that have not had the opportunity to provide any level of service, and we don't know exactly what's happening out there. We see the stores that are closed and the businesses are shut. We don't know about those ones who are home-based businesses, what's happening to them. And he was talking about very much that same thing, reaching out to all the businesses and providing a kind of a one-stop shop on information for them. I want to do, my own, take a look and see. I want to see what is happening in the community. When we talk about community resiliency, what we have now today, the businesses that are working and they found a different way to work, that's a demonstration of community resiliency. They are there. They've got different business models going forward. And we want to start identifying some of those examples so that businesses that haven't kept going, maybe can come up with some different ideas based upon what others are doing and sharing that information out so that I know they can go and look for themselves and do that, but sometimes they need to kind of see what 2 or 3 different businesses are doing and how they can support that. So I'm just going to do I'm going to do my own exercise of seeing who is in business and what classification, how they're doing business right now. And I might even reach out and talk to some of the business owners and say, how's it working for you? And do that, because I think there's things to be learned from this. And I'm also concerned that for those ones that aren't open now, how are they going to survive? What do they need to ensure their long-term future in the community? Because we will eventually recover from this, and I'm hoping that all the businesses will recover equally, and that may not be the case. So I'm going to do a little bit of homework myself on that and reach out and take a look, talk to some of the successful ones. I actually envision the idea of maybe having a local mentoring group of people who are doing, maybe doing a webinar with some of them, featuring some of them and inviting others to participate and talk, having that opportunity for people to talk to each other about how it's going, what people can do differently, and how we can help other businesses with their ideas and move forward. So some things to look at. I want to see what the bottom line is. What exactly is happening in our community now? And there's a number of different models out there as we're aware of. So let's see where we can go. Councillor Kroll?
Sort of further to what Councillor Lumley was saying and what you were saying, I found the meeting with Colin
Yeah.
really good. I think something that's really important is that that there is a central focus for businesses that are trying to come out of this on the plus side. It's with all the information that's coming out, I think it's difficult for individuals to sort of say, this works for me. So having Scredo acting as a focal point for business recovery and and they're partnering with the chambers. I think that's positive that there's one place. I think it's going to be unfortunate if people start going off helter skelter and it's not a level playing field for recovery. And then there's going to be animosity and pushback and how come he got this and I didn't get that? Where if it's all focused through one source, it's a level playing field for everyone. I think we have to be really careful that we don't start meddling in people's businesses and they say, well, how come you spoke to him and you didn't speak to us? So I like the idea of the whole recovery program being funneled through a central source and it keeps a level playing field for everyone. I have great faith in Colin. I know we had some questions with the capabilities of Scredo, but I think there is a really good skipper at the helm. And I was feeling very encouraged about the ultimate outcome coming out of this with someone like Colin working with Scredo.
I think the other thing we should recognize is we have a very good website ourselves. Elizabeth has put a lot of information on there and a lot of thought into it as a resource for people to look at. And I've had comments from people about that, as they've been able to go there and find things that they weren't aware of. So, okay. Anything else? Any other reports? Councillor Ladwig.
Just really quickly, sorry, I'm going to put you on a different view. I know I sent an email about this already, but I attended the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society Zoom meeting last week, and they're very excited to have broken ground on the Franklin Road project. So that happened last week. I'm sure GAO knows more about that than I do. But they're feeling really optimistic and positive about that. And according to their builder, they're anticipating anywhere from around 8 months to completion. But 8 months to a year, but that's really positive news considering the state of things. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing nothing else, I'll just remind everybody again, Earth Day tomorrow, April the 22nd. And also on April the 28th is a National Day of Mourning for Workers, and at 11 o'clock. And the suggestion is that if you have the opportunity, if you're by that, they're not going to have a gathering, but if you wanted to bring a flower and place on the memorial at that location during the day on the 28th, and that's over at Dougal Park. Sorry, Councillor D'Andrade.
Just a quick update. I met with the new board from the Gibson Senior Society, and they are getting obviously all their studying their finances and making the projections. They are quite concerned with, obviously, but they don't want to say anything until they get ready. But obviously, I could see some intentions of coming to the town of Gibsons. I don't know at this point, but they are working hard to.
Good.
And they have some buffers.
Good. Yeah. Okay, any other reports? Moving on to council correspondence for the week ending April the 6th and April the 14th. Anything arising from either of those correspondence files? Grab mine. Okay, hearing none. We'll go on. Motion to receive the correspondence for the weeks ending April the 7th and April the 14th. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley, all in favor? Thank you. It was received. Bylaws for the Director of Finance for the Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Amendment Bylaw number 1275-01-2020. Director of Finance, you want to introduce this, say anything about it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we've alluded to this one a little bit earlier in the meeting. And so the community charter grants municipalities the ability to access a short-term borrowing based on the current year's anticipated tax revenue. And historically, the town has not needed to rely on this mechanism, and we've had a limited authorization up to $100,000, and that was to match the town's line of credit and the purchasing card limits. And if you remember, in preparation for the 2020 fiscal year, bylaw 1275 was approved by council on December the 17th. So this year, the COVID crisis is having a significant impact, and recognizing the challenges, although the federal and provincial governments have put significant measures in place to assist businesses and residents. And we're expecting that those measures will help address the challenges that property owners are facing and help them pay their tax bill on time, and utilities as well. But there is going to be an impact on cash flow that we normally experience this time of year. So the increased authorization provided under this mechanism will allow us to respond to the circumstances that may result. It's important to note, though, that the town is not required to nor will borrow any of the funds if they're not required, but it is prudent to put this measure in place if that event does arise. And so the maximum amount of the short-term debt that we can incur under this provision is just over $3.6 million. And the amendment I'm proposing will provide authorization up to $3.5 million, which is below the imposed limit, the limit imposed by the charter. And so this provision in the charter does not require the traditional electoral approval process because it's short-term in nature, and that's why it expires at the end of the year normally. And it also does not impact the debt or our standard authorization borrowing calculation because, again, it's short-term in nature. The province has, since I wrote this report, the province has extended the repayment of this provision into the new year. So there's a change there. I'm hoping, again, we won't need to use this, and I wouldn't want to use it any longer than we absolutely had to. And so the interest is charged only on the amounts that the town would borrow, and at the total maximum authorized by the bylaw. And so we would only go up to 3.5 million, obviously not more. And I would only do that if we were in need. And so if we didn't have any requirement, there'd be no fees or charges or interest would be incurred. So it's just a provision to put in place in case a need arises. And then we have that opportunity at a very short notice to be able to do that. And so I've attached by law the amendment 1275-01, and I'm looking for 3 readings at this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, before we discuss it, could I have a motion to receive the report? Councillor Kroll. Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. Favor. Discussion. I have one question, Director of Finance, and that is that can we ask you to, well, will you give us a quarterly report update on the use of this bylaw, the monies that are drawn down from it?
Oh, absolutely. So I would expect that this would first, the earliest I have to draw on this would be, I'll know more after the July 2nd due date. And just timing allowed, I would, especially if the amounts are significant, I would try and give council a heads up that I would be undergoing that. And I'll be able to report, I'm not sure what the quarterly will look like, but I will be reporting back on any provision that we do have to use.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So anybody move the recommendation, the 2020 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Amendment Bylaw 1275-01-2020 be given first, second, and third reading? Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's adopted. Opposed? Oh, it's adopted. Thank you. I keep forgetting to ask that question. Okay, we're back down to, let's get to the end of my agenda here. New business, is there any new business? Any notice of motion? Back to inquiries, any inquiries?
At this time, I'll ask anybody who's attending the meeting if they have an inquiry to please use the raise the hand feature, and I'll put your audio on. I'm not seeing any, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll have a motion to close the meeting then. The meeting be closed in accordance with section 91A, C, and K of the Community Charter at considering personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position, labor relations or other employee relations, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and review of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. A motion to do that? Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, we're closed and we'll just take a couple minutes to clear the board of all the visitors.